Hi, everybody. It's Kerry. I want to talk to you today about the big upcoming transit shifts that are happening with all of the outer planets this spring. So, when I say outer planets, for Vedic astrology, a lot of us pay attention to Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. But what I mean are the outer planets of the classic uh, astrology, the ones we could see with our eyes. So technically, the Earth is the marker, right? So the inner planets are actually between Earth and the sun. So the inner planets are Mercury and Venus. They're always around the sun if you're looking at the astrological chart. So then it comes Earth. We're the third stone from the sun. And then the outer planets technically start with Mars. Mars moves pretty quickly compared to Jupiter, Saturn, and the nodes, which are the outer planets I want to talk about today. So we're going to leave Mars out of this for now. This is being recorded in mid-February of 2025. And I find myself repeating this story every day as I'm working with people. So I'm going to tell all of you world, what we've got coming at us. I've been doing forecasts and things for 25 years, watching all the planets moving and things like that. And I honestly do not remember a time when Jupiter, Saturn, and the nodes all changed signs within 2 months. And that's what we're going for. So overall, it feels like collectively and individually a big channel change. So when I go through all of this and tell everybody, oh, look, all these planets are changing and it looks kind of intense, usually I'll get a question like, is that good or bad? So please, yes, it's good or bad. It depends on you and what you're doing and who you are in your chart. So if you want to take this and apply it to your own self, sign up for a private session with me and we'll look at it. But yeah, this is going to be a general thing. It's going to be good and bad. And it's going to be different for everybody because we're all different. So let's start. Okay, it's mid February now. March, April, and May of 2025 looks very dynamic, and we're going to kick that off in about a month with a lunar eclipse. The moon will be joining Ketu, who's the south node of the moon, in the sign of Virgo, early degrees of Virgo. And then we're going to have the sun and the sun is in Pisces during that time. And then we're going to have, at the end of March is when things get really exciting, is March 29th. Okay, March 29th. Mark your calendars. We have the second half of that eclipse pair happens with a solar eclipse that happens around middle of Pisces, the sign of Pisces. And if you guys are just catching on to me or my astrology, I practice Vedic astrology. We use the sidereal zodiac, which is the scientifically observable zodiac. You can look up into the stars of Pisces right now and start seeing Venus, for example. Venus is up there. So that if you're a Western an astrology enthusiast, you're going to have to recalibrate your brain to deal with this. Okay, so March 29th, total, I don't think it's a total solar eclipse. We have a solar eclipse happening in Pisces, around 15 degrees Pisces. Okay, and that is, that's something. But just a few hours after that eclipse happens, we have Saturn moving into Pisces. So from Aquarius into Pisces. And so we'll have Saturn occupying the early degrees of Pisces through the spring. And it takes Saturn 28 to 30 years to go through the whole entire zodiac. He spends a lot of time in each sign. Saturn's energy can be limiting and contractive. and slow and cold. Saturn's job is to remind us that we're all here for a temporary amount of time on the planet. We're here to experience our karma, that our actions have consequences, and that we're responsible for them. so Saturn can be tough on you if you don't fall under that understanding. So Saturn pressure, feel the feeling of pressure and limitation comes with wherever Saturn might be transiting. Since 2020, Saturn has been in good dignity, meaning he's strong, he's powerful to limit, powerful to pressure. January of 2020 is when Saturn moved into Capricorn, which is his own sign, his earth sign. So when a planet is transiting through their own sign, they are capable, they're strong in their efforts. So that was January of 2020 through January of 2023 that Saturn was really strong. What happened? A lot of people were confined and pressured, and we had a pandemic and all kinds of things. So that was Saturn in Capricorn, January of 2020 through January of 2023. Then Saturn moved into Aquarius, which is his other sign. So he's also really strong in Aquarius. Aquarius is co-ruled by the north node of the moon, Rahu. So Aquarius has a little bit of a different vibe. It's an air sign. It's got Rahu's co-lordship. It's a little more dynamic. But it's also Saturn being strong. So, and for almost that whole time that Saturn was really strong, Jupiter was dominated by Saturn generally. Like December of 2020, we had Jupiter and Saturn conjoined for a great conjunction. So Jupiter lost that battle, Saturn was stronger. And then we had Jupiter move to Aquarius. That's still ruled by Saturn, so that wasn't a lot of growth. Jupiter rules growth and expansion. And then we had Jupiter in Pisces. That was very exciting because it's Jupiter's own sign, but Saturn was aspecting Jupiter. So step by step, we've had Jupiter kind of struggling. And Jupiter is the planet that we all look for hope and guidance and positivity and wealth and children and all the things that people like. So it's been tough. And it wasn't until May of 2024 when Jupiter moved from Aries to Taurus that Jupiter got out of range from Saturn. And I don't know, I'm not a big finance person, but I did notice that the stock markets really started to grow in May of 2024. So, we'll see. Anyway, Jupiter's getting out of range of Saturn's pressure generally. So now we have Saturn moving into Pisces on March 29th. Okay. And Saturn spends a lot of time in each sign, 2.5 to 3 years. So we're gonna see Saturn in Pisces for almost 3 years until February of 2028. So that'll be the new normal. The thing is, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So in a way, we're gonna have Jupiter a little bit on the upper hand when Saturn gets into Pisces. So that could be a positive shift. Okay, so that's happening. That's March 29th, which will put 6 planets in the sign of Pisces that day. We'll have the sun and moon, who have just done an eclipse action. Rahu, who is the eclipser, the shadow guy. Then we have Venus and Mercury, our 2 really enthusiastic little friends, both in retrograde motion. So that's a whole thing, retrograde Venus and Mercury at once. And then we'll have Saturn joined in. So 6 planets in Pisces, March 29th. Wow. Okay, so that's happening. Saturn moves in there. So what that does is it sets up a situation that'll prevail for about 6 weeks. Okay, so think about April through mid-May, we're going to have a situation in Pisces, which is that Saturn will be there and Rahu, the north node of the moon, will still be there. Rahu entered into Pisces in November of 2023. And Rahu and Ketu move in tandem, and they're always opposite to each other. Rahu is the north node of the moon. Ketu is the south node of the moon. They cause eclipses. We call them the shadow planets. So they actually move in tandem with each other in reverse motion from the rest of the planets, which feels like a big churn of the universe. So Ketu has been in Virgo since November of 2023, and Rahu has been in Pisces. And they go backwards in motion. So Rahu entered Pisces from the Aries side and has moved backwards and now has traveled down to the early degrees of Pisces. So when Saturn gets there, boom, Saturn and Rahu are going to be conjoined and together for about 6 weeks. So wow, that could be fun. Saturn and Rahu are actually have an affinity for each other, although it is a very odd couple of planets. But together they rule the sign of Aquarius, where Saturn's been transiting the last 2 years. So Rahu and Saturn know each other and can work together, sometimes in a very exciting way. So for 6 weeks, we'll have that Saturn and Rahu conjunction. Just for reference, there was a year and a half that Saturn, and this is a month and a half, okay, a year and a half, Saturn and Rahu were conjoined. I'll tell you when it was. That was like the beginning of 2013 until about August of 2014. Saturn and Rahu were conjoined in the sign of Libra. So think back to that, year and a half and see what happened, and maybe something similar could manifest, although it's going to be in a different sign and a different house of your chart. Anyway, Saturn and Rahu together. Think about wind and amplification and a lot of movement and very chaotic energy. Okay, so that's what happens. March 29th, that 6 weeks kicks off. And then Jupiter, let's talk about Jupiter now, because he's the ruler of Pisces. Jupiter has been in the sign of Taurus since May of 2024. It takes Jupiter 1 year-ish to get through a sign. So 12 years takes Jupiter all the way around the zodiac. And so we're going to have Jupiter shifting signs on May 14th. So just think in your head, mid-May, Jupiter's going to move signs. He's going to move from the sign of Taurus into the sign of Gemini for about a year. So while Jupiter is in Taurus, there's a couple of cool things happening. Like right now with Venus has entered into Pisces, which is fantastic. We love that. Venus is exalted in Pisces, which is Jupiter's sign, while Jupiter is sitting in Venus's sign. And this creates a really cool exchange of signs between the two of them. It's a very positive, creative, growth-oriented exchange. And that will be going on through the end of May. Actually, it'll be going on through mid-May when Jupiter moves. So until Jupiter moves signs, this is happening. Let's have that Venus-Jupiter exchange of signs be the goodness that buoys us through whatever transitions are happening right now. So the other thing is that when Jupiter is in Taurus until mid-May, Saturn, once he gets into Pisces, will actually aspect Taurus for that 6 weeks. So this 6 weeks period is really interesting because Saturn and Rahu are going to be together, and Saturn will be able to aspect Jupiter. So that seems like it could be another just tiny bit of time where Saturn gets his pressure onto Jupiter again. Could that be a little bit of a dip in the economy? Could we all feel a tightening of things? Maybe. Yeah. So April through mid-May, we have that weather pattern with Saturn and Rahu together, creating a lot of hurricane energy, and then Saturn dropping that over toward Jupiter in Taurus. Okay, and then mid-May, Jupiter is going to move into Gemini, taking away that loose aspect that Saturn's giving. So once Jupiter gets into Gemini, then the nodes are going to start shifting signs. So the North Node and South Node, Rahu and Ketu, the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon, they will move in tandem and shift signs. What Rahu and Ketu are, that nodal axis that we talk about, it's really a projection of the Earth's axis and how the Earth moves. Okay, so we are the world. So we're on the Earth, sitting at a little bit of an angle, and we're twirling around. We're going around. The axis, the North Pole and the South Pole of the Earth, they're not really very steady. So, we're actually like wobbling as the Earth as we rotate around our axis. So we're not perfectly like an ice skater moving. We're a little wobbly. And that wobble creates a sort of a jittery movement of the nodal axis. So we have two ways that we will measure where the nodal axis is at any given time. So it's moving in general in back reverse motion, but with a jitter. So the jitter is what we call the true node calculation. So if you have software out there and you're trying to set it up and you're trying to decide whether to put true node or mean node, just call me. We can talk about it for 4 hours about which one's right. So the true node is going to show that jitter. And in actuality, we say that the nodal axis moves in reverse motion. It does. But there are certain days where it is going forward motion, just like the other planets go into retrograde. The nodal axis sometimes goes direct. So that jitter is called the true node calculation. The other way of looking at the node's movement is the mean node calculation. Now, mean meaning average. So rather than looking at the exact little jittery spot of where the nodes are, we're just going to airbrush that and say, okay, they're always just moving backwards. So we're taking away the jitter. That's the mean node calculation. So those two calculations happen on the shift into Aquarius and Leo for the nodal axis happens on different days. Okay, one of them's mid-May, one of them's the end of May. So in your mind, just think the last 2 weeks of May, the nodal axis is going to shift. And by the end of May, it will have moved and Jupiter will have moved, Saturn will have moved, the nodal axis will have moved, okay? So that's in a 2-month period, end of March to end of May. So once everything moves, we will then have a whole new setup than what we have right now in mid-February. And the fact that it's all shifting at once in 2 months, really feels like a big shift and channel change. And is it going to be good or bad? Yeah, it's going to be good or bad, and it's going to be different for you, and it's going to be different for me, and it's going to be different for the United States and different for Ukraine. It's just different. It's hard to read a chart, the chart of the world, because we're all in different places and we're different people. So just know that there's a lot of shifts coming. And where those shifts are going to hit you are all those signs that I mentioned. So figure out where those signs are in your chart. Which houses do they occupy? Or call me and we'll have a session. So once that all shifts, I just want to say too that Jupiter and Gemini can be very dynamic. If you want to think back to what happened the last time Jupiter was in Gemini, go back 12 years and look at that. But I'm really interested about Rahu being in Aquarius and Jupiter being in Gemini pretty much for the whole time that Jupiter's in Gemini. It's going to get an aspect from Rahu, and in return, it's going to give an aspect to Rahu. Rahu and Jupiter like to aspect in the same way. Well, actually, Jupiter does it and Rahu copies. So they aspect in the 120-degree angles. So all of the air signs will be getting major Rahu and Jupiter energy for the next year, starting in mid-May, which could be interesting. I mean, Jupiter is growth and positivity and expansion. Rahu is unstable but amplified. So amplified growth, you know, could be good, could be bad, depends on what you're growing. So that let's see what happens with that. And then Saturn being in Pisces, okay, for the first time since 2019, right? Saturn is out of his element and he's in Jupiter's element again. So let's all track this. I don't know. I could be exciting, you guys. I don't know what else to say, but I wanted to just tell you that framework. And with that all said, we're going to have Rahu in Aquarius. We're going to have Saturn in Pisces. We're going to have Jupiter in Gemini, and we're going to have Ketu in Leo, right? Starting in May. And that'll be the new setup for pretty much the rest of 2025. So stay tuned. All of that happening means that I'll probably be talking on this YouTube more. So you can find me on Patreon and Substack and on my website, planetaryinfluence.com, Facebook, Instagram, sometimes X, but not very much. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you listening to me, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.